izindlu ezifinyeleleka kalula noma ubumpofu okufanele ngabe uhulumeni ukulungisile. Bese kuba khona nalaba ke ababize nge-missing in the middle income. Over the years, there is a history of robust engagement with labor formation for such program to be implemented for the benefits of the middle income workers who are middle income earners. We as MKP will ensure benefiting political associates. Our vision as MKP is to see people-centered approach where people live in dignity. Every family head living in a slum must be allocated land, not less than 500 square meters. This is not a charity, this is their rights.
Thank you so much. The next honorable member for 8 minutes, Honorable R. Go.
Thank you, Speaker. The Democratic Alliance recognizes the critical challenge of informal housing in KwaZulu-Natal and overcrowded conditions in informal settlements, often without access to essential services such as water, sanitation, electricity, or adequate housing. The DA believes that informal housing is not just a housing issue, but a fundamental question of human dignity, safety, and opportunity. The KwaZulu-Natal Elimination and Prevention of Re-Emergence of Slums Act is an important step towards addressing the severe housing challenges faced by communities across the province. The persistent growth of informal settlements is a direct consequence of inadequate planning, poor governance, and insufficient action by the state to address housing and urbanization issues. This act presents a significant opportunity to combat the dire conditions in which many are forced to live in. The elimination of slums requires a comprehensive and multidimensional approach that prioritizes the dignity, safety, and well-being of all individuals. Housing issues in KZN are complex and multifaceted, involving a range of social, economic, and political factors. KZN has a significant shortage of affordable housing, particularly for low and middle-income households. The demand for housing exceeds supply, with millions of our people living in informal settlements or overcrowded conditions. Many people live in areas with inadequate infrastructure, limited access to services like clean water, electricity, and sanitation. The reality is that people cannot afford to buy homes due to high interest rates, insufficient income, and the rising cost of living. The gap between the supply of low-cost housing and the number of people who need it remains large. High levels of unemployment and poverty, particularly in our rural areas, worsen the housing crisis. We also know that housing projects often fail to provide adequate infrastructure such as roads, sanitation, water, and electricity. In many cases, new developments are built without sufficient planning for the necessary utilities, further marginalizing our poorest communities. Corruption and mismanagement within the department have hampered efforts to deliver affordable housing. Funds intended for housing developments have often been diverted, leading to delays, unfinished projects, or substandard construction. We have faced economic challenges, including high unemployment, slow growth, and rising national debt. As a result, government spending has been tightly constrained, and housing, which requires substantial investment, has had to compete with other priorities like education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Insufficient government funding for housing programs has led to a reliance on private developers and limited the scope and scale of housing initiatives. The DA in the GPU is committed to finding sustainable solutions to the housing crisis by prioritizing the following: upgrading informal settlements. The DA supports a comprehensive approach to upgrading informal settlements, not simply dismantling them. This means investing in the infrastructure and services that communities need to thrive. Upgrading should include access to clean water, sanitation, electricity, and safe, stable housing that is fit for human habitation. Accelerating housing delivery. The DA calls for the swift and efficient delivery of well-constructed, affordable homes to the people of KZN who are still waiting for decent housing. The Department of Human Settlements must fast-track the construction of new homes and work with the private sector to deliver housing, preventing new informal settlements. While addressing the existing housing crisis, the DA advocates for a proactive measure to prevent the emergence of new informal settlements. This includes proper urban planning, zoning, and the creation of affordable housing options in urban and peri-urban areas, where the demand for housing is greatest. Empowering communities. The DA believes in empowering communities to take part in the process of improving their living conditions. Local residents should be consulted and involved in the planning and upgrading of their areas, ensuring that their needs and aspirations are central to the solutions provided. Sustainable and inclusive solutions. Beyond the provision of basic shelter, the DA advocates for the creation of sustainable communities. This involves not only the provision of housing, but also the creation of economic opportunities, access to education, healthcare, and transport, ensuring that all residents can prosper and improve their quality of life. Government accountability. The DA insists that government be held accountable for its failure to deliver on housing promises. This includes ensuring that public funds are used effectively, that projects are properly managed, and that corruption and mismanagement do not undermine the efforts to resolve the housing crisis. The majority of housing projects are implemented at local government level, but many municipalities lack the capacity to execute housing policies effectively. Local governments often struggle with limited skilled staff, inadequate infrastructure, and financial constraints. This leads to inefficiencies in project implementation, delays in housing delivery, and poor quality housing. While national government sets the legislative framework for housing,